Now, the Bank of England is expected to raise its key rate by 25 basis points later today, with Bloomberg Economics projecting an 8-1 vote. I've seen other expectations of 7-2. Officials will also offer new growth and inflation outlooks and may update their thinking on the neutral rate of interest. The decision will be announced at midday UK time. Simon Derrick waiting patiently with us this morning, Chief Currency Strategist at BNY Mellon. Right, back to you, Simon. Let's talk about what's going on with the UK. I've got this great chart on inflation because... One of the reasons to hike interest rates, of course, Economics 101, is to tackle inflation.
Yeah, you'd think.
Yes, you'd think. Inflation has been above target, and we did see the Bank of England hike rates, didn't we? But it's not... The direction of travel looks to be downwards for inflation, doesn't it?
Yes.
So explain all of that to us.
So the question is, why would you hike rates right now? Well, if you're a cynic, and I might possibly fall into that camp, I'd argue that any central bank, if it feels that there is possibility of trouble ahead, needs a little bit of ammunition to play with. And hiking rates by 25 basis points is neither here nor there for the economy. We're in a period of relative political lull. The summer recess in Parliament's taking place, and if they feel they may need some ammunition to cut again in the face of Brexit uncertainty in the latter parts of this year, then now's as good a time as any to hike rates.
Yeah.
It's a cynical view, but it's a view that takes into account you need ammunition in bad times.
Is that a cynical view then? Because, some very sensible people say to me, you don't hike rates just to cut them, that's daft. And other sensible people say, you've got to hike rates so you've got some room to cut if you need to. And
I think that's exactly right. I mean, because the problem is, if you keep rates low all the time, where do you go unless you go into negative territory? Where do you go if you need to start cutting again? I think they're just giving themselves more flexibility and more leeway. And I think, in fairness, given the uncertainty we have coming into the latter parts of this year about exactly how the Brexit negotiations and the vote in Parliament will take place, because that's going to be the key element of this, that huge level of uncertainty, I think it's wise to have a little bit of ammunition to be able to cut rates. Remember, go back to that summer of 2016 when the Bank of England made the move to cut rates to help calm markets. The one thing that really helped at that time was what the Bank of England was doing and what Mark Carney was saying. He's giving himself that flexibility again. What
are your targets on the pound then, Simon, at the moment? I'm just checking where we sit. 131 against the dollar. You give us your euro one as well. Where do we go, and what's the clincher?
Obviously, that's going to be very, very dependent on politics. It's going to absolutely down to what happens in Parliament, how they vote, whether they can get that deal through. I think that there is a reasonable chance that we could see Parliament vote down whatever deal comes through, and equally would vote against anything that looked like a hard Brexit. That provides you with possibility that you could have a second election, a second referendum. All that says to me is huge volatility. If you take it as being more negative, I would point out that sterling has a history of making 10% plus moves to the downside. So if it turns out negative, and there is a reasonable possibility it could be...
Meaning hard Brexit?
Well, we have a second election or we have a second referendum, there's more uncertainty.
Right.
Could you see something down in the 120s? Yes, of course you could.
So uncertainty can be defined many ways in terms of the pound.
But if you're going for a second election, you don't know how that's going to result on the Brexit front. Equally, if you go for a second referendum, who knows how that's going to turn out? So all those things just add to that we don't know what to do with sterling story.